natural resources are a rather unique investment area. They are capital intensive. They are deeply cyclical. And one of the things I've learned in my life is that to take advantage of that, you must be a contrarian or you will be a victim. There isn't very much middle ground. And so what you do is you look for sectors where the industry pricing has the industry in liquidation. That is, oddly, you look for sectors in liquidation where the selling price of the commodity is less than the median cost of production. You don't do this out of, some sense of self-hate. You do it because if the commodity is necessary for the material well-being of humankind, either the price goes up or the commodity goes away. This has served me well for 40 years. It took me 10 years to learn it, and I was served poorly in those 10 years. So you look for something where the industry pricing structure signifies that the industry is in liquidation. And you look for a sector, too, if you can find it, that in addition to the economics is out of favor politically. In the natural resource-based businesses, I could name lots of those. I could talk about coal if I wanted to, which is also not a bad trade. I could talk about oil and gas, which is what I talked about in Real Vision 2 years ago. But what I want to talk about today is uranium. Not only is the industry in liquidation based on current pricing, but if you want to hear something that's hated, just look at uranium. The trade really involves the electrification of life in the first instance, the increasing amount of electric power, electric gadgets that you and I use. But more importantly, it also goes to the electrification, the increase in material living standards of humankind. Many people don't realize that 1.2 billion people on Earth have no access to primary electricity. Another 2 billion people on Earth experience energy poverty, meaning intermittent or unaffordable energy. We need baseload power, and that's where uranium comes in. It's the densest fuel known to humankind, and that's important too if you're in an area that experiences resource poverty, a place like Japan or Korea or Taiwan. One fairly small building in Japan could store enough uranium to power Japan Inc. for 5 or 6 years. They simply can't store that much liquefied natural gas or that much coal. So the first argument in favor of uranium is the simple electrification of the world and the increasing electrification of the part of the world that can easily afford to pay for it. Not just electric cars, everything that we use. The second part of the uranium thesis is carbon. I'm not going to get myself into the global warming debate, but I'm also not going to bother debating with anybody that we ought to pump less crap into the air and pump less crap into the ocean. Our method of living on Earth needs to be as harmless as we can make it. Nuclear power generates no byproduct carbon. There's no soot. There's nothing like that. People point to radiation. The truth is there is one coal fly ash field in Ohio that generates more background radiation than every nuclear plant in the world combined. It's odd that when you talk about the pollutant byproducts from uranium, even in terms of radiation, they're fairly low on the byproduct pollution scale. But it's the economics that really get me. I love a commodity where the price must go up and it can go up. If a price must go up and can go up, I submit to you that it will go up. So here's the arithmetic. On a global basis, the total cost to produce uranium, I'm not talking about just the mine cost, but the cost of capital, in particular social rents, taxes, royalties, fees, but also prior year write-downs, which is to say unsuccessful capital efforts and exploration. The total cost to produce a pound of uranium is estimated about $60 a pound. Right now, the stuff is selling on the spot market for $50 a pound. So we make it for 60, we sell it for 50, we lose 10, and being miners, we try and make it up on volume. And we aren't doing a good job. The world is using about 200 million pounds, and we're producing about 125 million pounds. So we are running down inventories at about 75 million pounds a year. But it gets worse. the incentive price for new uranium, which the world is going to need in 2 or 3 years, is more like $75 a pound because of inflation in the supply chain and increasing social rents. So merely to maintain current production takes 60. To bring on new production, remember that we're in a 75 million pound deficit, takes 75. And demand for uranium, despite the wishes of the big thinkers, is growing fairly rapidly. The price can go up, too, because the cost of nuclear fuel relative to the total cost of generating electricity from a nuclear power plant is very low. They spend more on lawyers and lobbyists, and certainly much, much, much more on depreciation than they spend on power. If the price of the fuel input in a nuclear power plant were to double, on average, that would increase the cost associated with producing electricity by about 3.5%. In other words, it's an irrelevancy compared to things like interest rates, the cost of capital, taxes, and regulation. So I submit to you that the price must go up. It must go up because it's the most affordable form of baseload power in the world, even in countries like the United States that pretend that they can afford to be stupid about power. 20% of our baseload power is nuclear, and 13% of our total consumption is nuclear. If the price doesn't go up to cover the cost of production in 6 or 7 years, the alternative is that the lights will go out. If you're thinking about the thesis, think whether it's more probable that the price of uranium will go from $50 to $75 or the lights will go out, because those are the only two alternatives. So I would submit to you that since the price must go up and the price can go up, it will go up. But the thesis gets a little better than that, which is to say, increasingly, this has become evident to voters. And as a consequence of being evident to voters, it's evident to politicians. 3 years ago, a public opinion poll was taken in Japan, and a mere 21% of Japanese voters, post-Fukushima, were in favor of uranium. Today, the number is 61%. The Kyoto Protocols are popular in Japan. Energy security is popular in Japan. And there is a new understanding that despite the sort of strange love-fear that people have of uranium, that the risk of mortality from uranium, unless something goes really, really, really wrong, is really, really, really low. The co-founder of Greenpeace has come out in favor of nuclear power plants. The changing politics of nuclear power plants even has President Biden, who had a campaign promise to get rid of it, now suggesting he's going to subsidize it. I need to be careful who I choose as my friends, of course, but I say that just to illustrate the changing political winds around uranium. Another thing that's happening is the spot market. The uranium business, the uranium spot market has been oversupplied since Fukushima, way oversupplied. And the price of uranium on the spot market fell from $85 to $16 or $17 post-Fukushima. It's taken a long time to wade through that spot market overhang, but we've begun to do it. Now, for the last 10 years, utilities haven't bothered to do structured term contracts in uranium because it was cheaper to buy it in the spot market. But that game is over. When the price goes up and the price gets locked in by utilities for the 5 or 6 year time frame, the producer's future cash flows are both assured and visible. And there is nothing that the market likes to see as much as rising earnings that are both secure and visible. So I guess the final catalyst has been that a lot of the oversupply came from Japan post-Fukushima. And I've thought for 3 or 4 years that the biggest impetus in terms of near-term demand will be the pace of Japanese restarts. But I didn't know what year that would occur. It turns out that year is 2022. The Chinese are building nuclear power plants like mad, but they're going to affect demand 5 years from now, 6 years from now, 7 years from now. Japanese restarts change demand right now, and we're having that happen. So my suggestion to you is that this is inevitable and imminent. simultaneously. Two different words. The difference between those words have punished me from time to time in the past. But in this circumstance, it's a situation that has to happen, and I believe will happen fairly quickly. By fairly quickly, I mean in the 1 to 2 year time frame.